Check, where it's mind over chatter. And today we have a very special guest coming to us from the East Coast, from the state of Maryland. And I'd like to welcome Catherine Rose. Welcome.
Thank you.
Catherine, can you tell us something about yourself, your background, what you did in your earlier life?
Well, I grew up in a middle-class family in the Baltimore area in Maryland. Grew up on waterfront property adjacent to the Gunpowder State Park. Across the river from us was the military installations of Aberdeen Proving Grounds. And
right across the river?
Right across the river, within a mile from my home.
What do they do there?
That's a good question. I know they have, in the early 40s and 50s, they did a lot of weapon testing. A lot of ordinances are still in the river in which I live.
Oh, wow.
That they're restricted areas now.
They're lined? I mean, you can, like, hit a water mine or something?
That's what they say.
Wow.
And
sounds like a fun place.
Well, I didn't know that at the time, and growing up, it certainly was.
Well, you know, Maryland is known for things like that. You have this arsenal, you have Annapolis, right. NSA headquarters at Fort Meade, and Fort Detrick Science Lab. So for a small little state, it's a lot of stuff in there.
And I found out even more than I once realized. So it was an interesting childhood.
Were there any strange events that happened in your childhood that made you think something wasn't right?
You know, there were things as a child that I thought may not be, but not having really any reference of comparison, I didn't quite know. I mean, as far as I knew when I grew up, I had an idyllic childhood.
Yeah.
Living on the water, I had my family all around me, my cousins, my aunts, and my uncles. You know, it seemed to be a fairly normal childhood, or so I thought.
So at what point in your life did you feel something's not right here? This isn't what I thought it was.
I would have to say in my later 20s, I started realizing things weren't quite right. It really started with my marriage.
Tell us about that.
You know, I married a man that, for the life of me, I can't understand why I married him.
How did you meet him?
I met him at a bar with a girlfriend of mine. And at the time, in my 20s, that's really what you did to socialize. And he never even really fit the type that I would have been interested in, but there was an immediate attraction there. And I even went into my marriage with trepidation.
So you even going into it felt, I'm not doing the right thing?
I felt forced, almost. Not so much by him, but I felt it was something that I had to do. That I was on a course that I couldn't really stop.
Like a compulsion.
Exactly.
A lot of people with programming tell me that.
Yes. I have many friends that were in the same situation, that married men that they couldn't understand why they did. They were interested in someone else, and for some reason they chose the husband that they did.
And did those marriages last?
Oh, no. No. Many of them did not.
And how did he treat you after you were married?
It changed. He was very abusive. Very
physically, mentally, emotionally?
Some physical abuse, but it was mostly emotional and psychological abuse. Unbeknownst to me, he was having many affairs during the marriage. Yet there was something that just wasn't quite right about him. I would see him switch personalities. It was almost as if he was schizophrenic, but not really having any background in that. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. But from one sentence to another, his whole mood and his whole demeanor would change.
How did you react?
I thought at first it was something I was doing. I just didn't understand. And then after a while, realizing that it really wasn't me, that it was something wrong with this man. But he is very intelligent, highly educated, but I knew something just wasn't right. Yet during the later days of the marriage, I did have a child.
How long were you married to him?
I was married to him for 7 years.
And at what stage did you have the child?
Year 5.
Okay.
Going into year 6.
And then you divorced him when she was a year old?
Yeah, she was 18 months old, and I separated from him.
Okay. Because
I believed that there was something so abusive about him, I thought it was going to transfer onto my child.
I see.
And I left.
Okay. And was he okay with that, or did he fight you?
Oh, no. No, he was not okay at all with that. He became even more verbally abusive, psychologically abusive. I mean, phone calls started, many things started happening. And then even accusations of child abuse and all were coming up at the time. And during my separation, I found out that his brother had been abused by him when he was a child.
He abused his own brother?
He abused his own brother, yes, for many years.
Really?
Where his brother finally escaped and was living in parts unknown, and his family didn't even know where he was.
My goodness.
Yes, although I was in contact with his brother. And his brother told me that after I separated.
Do you know if your husband had been abused himself as a child?
I suspected that he had, just some things that he had told his brother about his father. About it. It was his father that
makes
I
sense. Usually it's generational.
Right. And so I had a lot of suspicions there with my own daughter. And, with her being his child, there were a lot of problems as well.
Did she ever talk to you when she got older about that?
Yes, she did. And for many years, I had tried to keep him away from her through the court system. However, I was unsuccessful doing so.
What did the court say?
She was handed over to him.
Is that right?
Just handed over against psychological profiles of the man, evaluations. The psychologist felt that there may be abuse going on, and the judge at the time just decided that he had not seen his daughter in 2 years, and that those old reports were, and in fact, they were old and had no bearing on the present situation, and the age of 8 turned her over to him.
As custodial parent?
No, but unsupervised visitation. He would come and spend time with her in hotel rooms here. He lived out of state, and she would visit him in Texas where he was living.
And did she ever, when she came home, tell you about things that happened?
Many things, but initially she would act it out at that age. She would act out her discomfort around him, her dislike of him, but many other things were going on with her at the time that I couldn't put a finger on what was wrong with her. I had taken her for evaluations.
Physical and mental?
Oh, physical and mental and academic evaluations. It's like no one could really put a handle on what's going on with her.
Was there physical evidence of abuse?
There was no physical evidence, but by the time she verbalized what had happened to her, the abuse had been going on for years.
Oh, my.
And she broke down and was in and out of mental institutions quite some time. And then she became more detailed on what had happened to her. But it was all of that was what was going on with her. And at myself, I was experiencing sensations I didn't quite know.
Like what?
Now I know it was a Kundalini activation and programming issues that were involved.
What did it feel like to you?
It felt as if someone had reached into the center of my body, my solar plexus, and started pulling it out of my body. And I would experience waves going up and down my body, back and forth, like undulating waves that were uncontrollable. There was nothing I could do to stop it. I didn't know what to do.
How long did this last?
That lasted several years.
Was that right?
Yes.
Had you sought medical treatment for this?
It didn't seem of a medical nature, but I sought out psychics. I thought perhaps, they could help me because this seemed like it wasn't a medical condition. I don't know why. It just didn't seem that way to me. One lady that I spoke with, she was the one that suggested it may be a Kundalini activation. And I was at my wit's end. Here I had a daughter that I didn't know how to help. The medical system certainly failed